Hello, welcome to Common Censored. I'm Lee Camp, joined as always by Eleanor Goldfield.
Hello.
And this is the show where we talk censored stories and people, sensible solutions, and common ground movements to fight and build.
And sometimes other shit.
I feel like it's permanently other shit now. For a while you would go back to other stuff, but it's other shit.
You know, it's really based on my mood. And
but you haven't been in a stuffed mood in months.
That's true. You know what the thing is at the end of the day, which is where we are right now. End of my working day. I just don't have it in me to put on the happy face of it's stuff. It's other stuff. It's just stuff. I am thoroughly embroiled in some shit.
Can't even manage the word stuff. That is how rough the day has been on her, folks.
No, that's not what I said. I just said that there's, if you catch me like around lunch, especially if I've just eaten, because then I'm just a happier person in general, if I'm around food.
Okay.
If you catch me around then I'm a little bit more happy-go-lucky. But at the end of the day, at the end of the working day, there's just, the weight of the day, of the work, even though it's a lot of good work, it just pushes you from stuff to shit on the stuff shit
meter. And I would argue that this first 2 minutes has qualified as the other shit. This was it.
Well,
we did it.
It was your comment that spurred the conversation.
I know. So let's get started here. Although, real quick, I want to tell everybody, live stream this week, Friday, 8:30 p.m., only at youtube.com/Moment of Clarity. We answer your questions, deal with your topics, hang out for a while. It's a good time. This Friday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/Moment of Clarity. All right. I have some breaking news here. I was watching Fox News Motto, the anal leakage of newscasts, and they are telling us, apparently, we are in a full-on cultural war, all right? This is the fascist leftists, they say, who want to destroy all of history and take away your freedom against anyone that is nice and good. And apparently, it's the leftists are so powerful that they, along with their 2.5 members of Congress, have really ripped apart the country. And luckily, there is Donald Trump to put it back together again. So very exciting on that front. Are you excited that Trump's going to put it all back together?
I'm excited about this new mutant breed of leftist fascist. I'm eager to meet them.
I think you're one of the leaders.
I'm assuming it's one of those people that is flaming homosexual and is the head of the Pray the Gay Away camp.
Oh, one of those like right-wing senators.
Right. So really, what it sounds like to me is something that's not actually possible.
It's the unicorn of protest movements.
No, that's an insult to unicorns, Lee. Unicorns are lovely, vibrant beings.
But they are into rainbows, so that fits.
Fascists are not into rainbows.
No, I was going off your gay comment.
Yeah, no, this is obviously, as soon as I read that comment,
You're right, fascists are not into rainbows. Nazi flag, very dreary.
Very dreary. Very drab.
Very kind of Dracula.
Very drab. Which in turn I feel is an insult to Dracula, because dude was just into some kinky shit, and I don't think he should be.
That's true, he was bi.
Marred as a fascist.
He was definitely bi.
Just saying.
Definitely bi.
But as soon as I read that comment, I immediately, the image that immediately popped into my head was Inigo Montoya from Princess Bride. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. And if people do not get that reference, stop, press pause on this podcast and go watch Princess Bride, because you've missed out on a prime bit of culture.
Every once in a while you use that reference on this podcast, and I think it's well worth it. I think we need to give you like a red button you could just hit.
I agree.
You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
You know what's fascinating about that comment in the film is that the word actually does mean
He's actually
using it properly, which confused the fuck out of me as a child because I was like, I wasn't to like the 3-syllable words, the 4-syllable words or whatever. And so when I watched that film, I was like, but I thought inconceivable sounds like it is unbelievable or impossible, but maybe it's not. And so like I refused to use that word through like much of my adolescence because I was so mortified that I was going to use it wrong.
It is much better when you use that expression referring to something that someone's literally using incorrectly. It's far better that way rather than the other way. But yeah, Trump clearly thinks, and this is just the quick political topic we get out of the way at the beginning. Trump clearly thinks that creating a culture war is the only way he's going to win, and so that seems to be fully what he's focused on. He's moving past coronavirus, even though it is not done moving past us. I'll tell you that much.
It's a way to avoid talking about it. Right, and I think I read I read somewhere that he spent like all of one sentence saying like thanks to the frontline workers and everything like that.
Trump
but
saying
did not,
thank you, that's a classic. Someone write that down.
But did not mention coronavirus at all, and basically other than that, just talked about like how important it is to like create some sort of like dead racists garden of statues or something. That's his plan, and that the leftists are fascists trying to take over the world. And so yeah, this is
maybe he meant thank you to the frontlines workers who are knitting new Confederate flags to replace the burnt ones. Maybe that's what he meant. Despite the virus, they're out there making those Confederate flags. Anyway, other quick topic that I'm putting out here, I'm going to mention on Redacted tonight as well this coming week, but Ghislaine Maxwell has been arrested. I'm sure many of you have noticed.
I thought it was Ghislaine.
No, it is not.
It's not. The S is silent.
The S is silent.
Oh.
Or near silent.
All right.
Ghislaine Maxwell has been arrested and by the FBI apparently. She was in America all this time in a cabin somewhere. And they claim they knew where they've been watching her for like 6 months or something, which I don't quite get that. Did they think Prince Andrew was going to like show up at her like cabin and they'd be like, got him? Like it didn't, I don't really know.
But also that would prove nothing.
Yeah, I don't really know what they thought they'd get by watching her for 6 months. But anyway, she's been arrested. This is Jeffrey Epstein's assistant and fixer, and at least one of the girls, or maybe multiple girls, have also accused her of violating them, of being involved in some of the sex. And obviously
Right.
Epstein, as many of you know, is this, he ran this sex traffic ring, but many people who actually do the research, besides just showing you the kind of surface level story, say Epstein was not the kingpin. That seems to be Les Wegner, the head of Victoria's Secret, and maybe others. But what I talk about in Redacted Tonight this past week, which I filmed it before Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested.
Like the day before, right?
The day before. So I didn't know she was going to be arrested, and I have a comment about how no one's been arrested outside of Epstein, who suicided himself. And so I didn't know
Lee, it was just a mysterious death because both guards took a nap together and the cameras shut off.
That's what guards do. That's what guards do. Listen, it's more efficient if they nap at the same time to get the naps over with, okay?
And everyone screams right before they commit suicide, right?
Listen, I would scream too if I'd found out I was going to commit suicide. I would. It makes perfect sense. It all adds up perfectly. Anyway, I didn't know she was going to be arrested, but the reason I did the episode, which you can go watch it at youtube.com/redacted tonight, is because there is one major issue of this story that is left out of the Netflix documentary, left out of the Discovery investigation documentary, all these things that dig in pretty deep. They show most of it. They talk to victims, all this stuff. What they leave out, which this is Elizabeth Voss's research, and along with Whitney Webb, she quotes Whitney Webb as well, is that it's the military intelligence, and specifically Israel's military intelligence connections to Epstein. There's a former military intelligence agent who has revealed this. His last name is Ben Menashe, and he has said that they were connected to Israeli military intelligence. Ghislaine Maxwell's father, can't remember his first name, but last name Maxwell, he died in mysterious circumstances, but he was given like a fucking royal Israeli funeral, like on the Mount of the Olives, with like a state funeral thing. So there is strong ties to Israel, and apparently what many are accusing them of having done was not just running and being involved in this sex ring, but then filming these politicians, high-level politicians, and using it for blackmail.
Can we just call it a rape ring? Because sex, I mean...
A rape ring sounds like an object you use.
Well, sex ring does too. A low cock ring. I mean, come on.
True.
It irritates me that, and this is one of the things that I kind of like... That fucking irritates me with regards to language, because one of my favorite tweets that I ever saw was, okay, rape is not about sex. It's about violence and power. You wouldn't hit someone with a shovel and call it gardening. And that's exactly, like, I fucking love that, because this is not about whether you feel, sex is about intimacy, it's about respect, and it's about love, and rape is the antithesis of all those things. So when people say, like, oh, well, that guard had sex with the prisoner in jail, it's like, no. You cannot have sex in a power dynamic like that when someone's handcuffed. Fuck you. It's rape. And so that's just, I know it's not you saying that. That's what everyone has called it. But I just want to say, like, can we just call it the rape ring?
Sure. Although I'm still picturing like a WWE like match ring.
That's fine.
That there'd be rape inside.
And there you go.
Okay.
Something that visually grotesque, I think is...
Fair enough. Yes, so this rape trafficking ring that Epstein was involved in. And anyway, she's now been arrested. Many people are now taking bets as to how exactly she'll be suicided in the next couple weeks. They've already announced that she has coronavirus, which
that's convenient.
Graham Elwood tweeted out, well, now we know how they'll take her out, is to say, oh, it was the coronavirus that did it. But anyway, there's a lot of questions as to whether she'll reveal things, whether they'll stop her from revealing things. I mean, if he was connected to intelligence, U.S. intelligence, or Israeli intelligence, they may want her to shut up rather than wanting her to speak the truth, the FBI, that is. So who knows what we're going to get out of this, but anyway.
I feel like no one... none of the agencies either responsible for arresting her or holding her or any of that want her to say anything, because the people on that list are, from the Clintons to the, I mean, it's just
furthermore, let's be honest, someone had to unlock the door at the holding facility for Epstein. Mm-hmm. Someone had to let those guys in. So it's like, probably, I mean, unless they had heavy explosives. So it's like, yeah,
it was like a road runner.
Yeah, you figure somebody on the inside helped take Epstein out, and I don't know, same could happen here. But let's move along to some of the stories that are not getting mainstream coverage. And this is a good story. Good news.
Oh, sorry, that's me.
We got some good news.
I was not looking at the document.
You know what you were?
Said that.
You know what you were paying attention to? Other shit.
Other shit.
You were on the other shit scope out.
I was just scrolling through. No. So this is actually really good news. And let's just preface it by saying that yesterday and today was like a 1-2 punch to the oil and gas industry, and I'm super excited to announce, first of all, the best news of the two news stories. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline, ACP, has been canceled by Duke Energy and Dominion Energy due to legal and cost issues. So if you're not familiar with the ACP, I've talked about it on my show, my previous show, Act Out. It's basically the quote-unquote sister pipeline to the Mountain Valley Pipeline, the MVP. The ACP was a 600-mile fracked gas pipeline, proposed fracked gas pipeline that was slated to go through Virginia, West Virginia, and North Carolina. And it had started back in like 2014, I believe, and they weren't expecting it to be finished until 2022 due to the extreme delays thanks to legal issues and cost. They had expected it to cost $4.5 billion, and they were now looking at something even above $8 billion.
And this
so
is
nearly double the cost.
This is a huge thank you to protesters and activists that were really the force behind this, because at the end of the day, they may say, oh, it was the lawsuits, but A, guess who brings the lawsuits? B, guess who holds up the building of the pipeline long enough for these lawsuits to have any kind of impact?
Well, yeah, that was my next point. This decision
to cancel. I
wanted
to say something. I felt so left out here. I didn't know.
I'm sorry.
I didn't know what to say.
You can take the next story.
Okay.
So this came after, this was about 3 weeks after the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, after Dominion Energy won in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, right around the same time that it handed down the ruling about DACA and about LGBTQ discrimination, handed down a ruling that said that Dominion Energy had every right to cross the Appalachian Trail because fuck you, one of the most biodiverse regions in the world. And so even after that, even with that win, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline has been canceled. So, again, as you noted, Lee, this really speaks to the power of activism. And it also just speaks to the power of the market. I mean, the truth of the matter is, and there was somebody that really talked about this in a press conference after this announcement came out, that it's just not viable, that gas is just not viable.
Well,
fracking is just not viable. Even before the pandemic, oil and gas was suffering greatly and was really only being held together by the billions of dollars of subsidies that are handed out by our government. And even then it was suffering.
And people have long known, and activists have focused on the fact that fracked gas, which is, arguably the most damaging, the most harmful, the one that has the most repercussions, and the one that is Swiss cheesing America right now, fracked gas is only profitable around $60 a barrel when gasoline's at $60 a barrel. Now, I don't know what it is today, but I know that when this pandemic was hitting, it dropped to like $20 and $30 a barrel, half of what they need it to be. So the fact that it's tanked, the fact that it's tanked like this has been very important to making this not feasible for these energy companies. And the truth is, the way forward for doing anything about climate change is to make this the case for all kinds of gas, all kinds of fossil fuels, make their brands toxic, make their using it toxic. Using it is toxic, but make it just costly and impossible for us to keep running on fossil fuels. And that is the only way, like, humankind will have much of a shot in fucking 9 years.
Yeah, and so again, like, the power of frontline activism cannot be, you can't really overestimate how incredibly powerful frontline activism has been in the fight against the ACP. So huge shout out to all of the folks who supported either on the front lines or supported the folks on the front lines,
especially the tree sitters, because that looks boring. I don't know how. You've got to have some serious internet connections or something to do.
You don't have internet. That's the other thing.
Wait, so are there your books?
You've got books.
Does someone throw books up?
You've got books, yeah, and you've got walkie-talkies, so you can like talk to people and doing ground support.
Books are so hard to read when you're drunk.
But I just want to take a moment right here to also note the importance of this with regards to racial justice, because I think we can oftentimes think about these issues like they're their own silos, like, oh, this is a win for environmental issues, but this is a win for racial justice, because a lot of the places that this pipeline was slated to go through were predominantly and historically black and brown neighborhoods.
Not by accident.
Of course.
There's a reason for that, because these companies know that they will face far less political pressure if they go through poor and minority neighborhoods. And that's why so many areas of like Louisiana, one of the poorest states in the union, have become corporate sacrifice zones because there's so little resistance. I mean, they don't own politicians like white areas do.
So one example is Buckingham County, Virginia, which is about 70 miles west
That's where
of
the
Richmond.
palace is, right? Where they keep
Right,
the palace?
yes.
Yeah.
It's about 70 miles west of Richmond, which is the state capital of Virginia. And that is there's a historically black community there called Union Hill. And some families of Union Hill, can trace their lineage to slave ancestors and freedmen who settled there after the Civil War.
I was going to say that's probably why they called it the Union Hill.
So so this community, which is part of the community that was going to get sliced by the pipeline, is historically black and was really moved to fight against this pipeline, and also worked together with the Poor People's Campaign. And talked about the inequities in terms of environmental justice and how that relates to racial justice and income inequality. And this was a really fascinating and important intersection of issues here. And so it's vital that we recognize that these issues cross so many intersections in our identities and our lives. And that, so this is not just a win in terms of environmental justice, but environmental justice is racial justice. And one resident of Union Hill noted, she said, "I can sleep better at night. I can breathe now, and I know that I'll be breathing clean air." And so these
there is that clean air, always a plus.
And again, like you noted, Lee, with Louisiana, so many of the communities that are in Cancer Alley, for instance, are families that are Black and brown and indigenous, and are suffer extreme health problems because of their proximity to these chemical plants and oil refineries and the like. So again, it's super important to note that. And that also ties into the next story, because if you'll recall, the Dakota Access pipeline.
Win number two.
Yes,
Win number 2 of the week.
The Dakota Access pipeline was actually moved. It was closer to Bismarck, which is a predominantly white area. It was moved to go through specifically the middle of Standing Rock Sioux Reservation and their sacred land there. And this, of course, spawned the fight back in 2016 with regards to the No DAPL fight and Water is Life.
Because they were counting on, again, less political strength, and the indigenous don't generally own politicians, and they were not counting on it becoming a national protest movement. But
right.
As we saw, they used their police officers, the fist of the fascist state, to remove people, and they continued with the pipeline anyway. But update.
And it was finished, and so it's been pumping oil for roughly 3 years now, but today, and we're recording this on Monday, July 6th, a court has ordered the Dakota Pipeline to shut down. It has 30 days in which to comply with this order. And basically, the long and the short of it is that basically the court was like, "Oh yeah, all of that shit that everyone was saying like 3 years ago, that's true." Basically, they ordered the shutdown over concerns about its potential environmental impact. Like, nobody was fucking saying that like 3 or 4 years ago, you fucking assholes.
Right.
But so this is a very.
When they said water protectors, I didn't know what they meant. I thought that they showered a lot or something. I didn't know.
So yeah, this is an important win, but it's also important to note that unlike the ACP, this is not a full shutdown. Basically, it's a temporary shutdown, and Energy Transfer Partners, the company behind DAPL, has announced that they are going to appeal the order to shut down. And that they, because the judge didn't rule that the pipeline is outright illegal, they said that the permitting process was insufficient.
And there's been stoppages like this for various pipelines, and they usually ultimately get past them. So this is not the death knell of the Dakota Access pipeline. But one thing I wanted to ask you was, I remember when you were down in Louisiana with that pipeline fight, they were ordered to stop, and they just kept going, right?
Yeah, so what happened with the Bayou Bridge pipeline in Louisiana was that there were several work stoppage orders pending, same thing with this, pending reviews of permits and things like that. And then water protectors, some of the things that we did was just to take boats out into the bayous and check. And people were still working.
There were still construction
during
workers,
a work
yeah.
stoppage. And then you'd go through the trouble of calling the Army, the Army Corps, and you'd call the fucking water board, and they'd be like, well, you got to talk to these people. It's not our fucking... And this is the problem.
Because there's a good old bore network down there, and, if you know the right guy to talk to, you go ahead and do your work. I'll look the other direction. I don't know.
Well, and it's not even like who is it that's looking the other direction? Like everybody and no one at the same time, because while a judge can place a work stoppage order, nobody is really tasked with enforcing that order. So therefore, it's kind of like, well, we're expecting you to babysit yourself and, honor code, you promised to stop working.
This reminds me, corporation, you notice human beings on a regular level, person-on-person level, are never asked to just self-report your murders. Just listen, could you self-report your rapes? We're not going to check on that anymore. But this reminds me of when the Wall Street, the new SEC chair, maybe it was, or one of them, said, we're going to back off investigating fraud on Wall Street, and we're expecting corporations and big banks to self-report any malfeasance. And, my response, this is a year ago, I can hardly remember the report, but my response at the time was, why would you ever do that? Unless you wanted them to go. And then the person said, well, we start with the assumption that they want to do the right thing. And I was like, why? Why would you ever have that assumption? That is a terrible assumption.
Seriously, and that's oftentimes the issue with these dirty energy projects. And so we shouldn't. While we should definitely recognize that this is a victory, it's not on the same level as the ACP because Energy Transfer Partners will appeal. And also there's a potential that, this was a Reuters report that the Dakota Access pipeline shutdown could revive the oil by rail industry, which is fucking horrifying because...
The bomb trains.
Yeah. Pipelines leak and oil trains are not a step up.
Oil trains go boom.
Yes, they go boom and they fall over and they leak everywhere. And it's fucking horrifying. So the answer is not to then just pile a bunch of fucking toxic sludge onto trains. The answer is to shut all of these down together. And there is, a little bit of potential for a domino effect here too that I want to recognize because I don't want to be all doom and gloom or boom and gloom or whatever.
Boom and gloom.
Hey, you got that.
Ah. Look at you. You're on the ball.
Thank you.
She'll be here all week, folks. Everyone, tip your wait staff. Try the veal.
Try the veal? That's awful.
It's an old Catskill reference. It's not, I don't eat meat, but it's an old Catskill reference.
And if you ate meat, veal is like the cruelest of all.
The worst one.
So the DAPL shutdown, folks are saying that it could also spell trouble for the Enbridge Line 3 project in Minnesota, which is another project that I've talked a lot about, which again goes through indigenous reservation areas and will greatly risk contaminating the rice fields that they have there and a bunch of different waterways and bodies of water. So this Line 3 project has also run up to a lot of resistance, a lot of indigenous resistance, indigenous-led resistance, and so folks are thinking that this could be a domino effect in the region because the same arguments have been put forward with regards to the Line 3 that were put forward for DAPL. So there's definitely hope there. And there's definitely hope for other folks that are fighting pipelines in other areas to share these arguments and to share tactics and ideas and, of course, resources with regards to continuing the fight against all of these projects.
Yeah, so big wins, exciting stuff going on. Let's keep the momentum. A couple of quick things before we get to some more stories. Like I said at the beginning, live stream this Friday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll be answering your questions, covering your topics, chatting with everybody. If you haven't done it, it's a good time. It's completely free. YouTube.com/Moment of Clarity. Also, Eleanor's movie is available at hardroadofhope.com. It's been winning awards. People really love it. It's a great documentary on exactly the stuff we've just been talking about, fracking, oil and gas, etc. You should definitely check it out, hardroadofhope.com. Plus, it's only an hour, so I feel like it's an easy watch. Check it out.
Less than an hour.
Also, my comedy special is another hour you can enjoy for free. It's at leecampamerican.com. 77,000 people have now watched it for free.
Woo!
It's got like over a 95% approval rating, so they can't all be wrong, folks. If you haven't
how do you
seen
get
it,
an approval rating?
I mean the thumbs up versus thumbs down. Come on. Get your shit together. LeeCampAmerican.com. Watch it for free. Also, Patreon.com/Common Censored. We have updated tiers. You can get my book. You can get Eleanor's book signed. That's all at Patreon.com/Common Censored. We have no ads except for talking about our own projects, so there's no corporate sponsors. It's all this show is all sponsored by you guys. So thank you so much for those of you who are members. My book is at leecampbook.com. All of Eleanor's writing and everything is artkillingapathy.com. And you can email us topics, ideas, thoughts, complaints. Complaints we will not read. Commoncensored at protonmail.com. Commoncensored at protonmail.com. I'm kidding. We'll read the complaints. Okay.
I won't.
So let's keep going. Since we were talking about oil and gas, I feel like this next story fits. Despite the fact that we have a pandemic raging around the country, it's getting worse than ever, maybe, because fucking morons think that it's their freedom to go kill their grandparents. Despite all that, guess what? Climate change continues. It continues. It has been a positive that people have stopped driving and flying nearly as much, which is wonderful, but it doesn't solve the problem. Massive fires in Arizona right now. I'm going to talk about that more on Redacted tonight this week. They're like unprecedented.
In California, right?
Well, the ones that are really so far unprecedented are Arizona. I'm sure California has fires raging as well, but these things are crazy. And the other fact is, in Arizona, this is supposed to be their monsoon season, and it's just, I mean, it's really tragic, the amount of fires that are raging, and they get basically no coverage. I mean, in California, the only real coverage we got was when that entire town went up in flames. And now in Arizona, this, maybe there's a mention on CNN here and there, but it's very little, and these fires are really tragic.
Well, and to that point, there was a recent article in Mint Press News talking about the fires in California at the moment, and how the state's fire department is dangerously understaffed because
they don't have enough prisoners?
Yeah, because there are a lot of prisoners that, are in fucking coronavirus hell, aka our prison system. And roughly 40% of California's firefighters are prisoners.
And
40%!
And we've talked about this before, I think, but guess what? Once they fight fires for 5-10 years as prisoners and they get out of prison, not allowed to be firefighters.
Yeah.
Because legally or whatever, the fire departments will not hire someone who's been in prison. So it's like, it's such a fuck you. They get $1 a day or something to fight these fires, risk their lives, save California, and then they get out of prison and they're not allowed to be firefighters.
Right. And I think I was talking to someone from Fight Toxic Prisons, which is a great organization. If you want to check it out, look up Fight Toxic Prisons. But they were saying that the problems that we have, on here, quote unquote, on the outside, are all amplified on the inside. So the injustice of low wages...
Meaning not enough good stuff on Netflix?
Exactly. The disgusting problem of low wages, well, that's so much more amplified on the inside. The issue of coronavirus, In San Quentin alone, which is a prison just north of San Francisco, there are roughly 1,400 active cases. And, more than a dozen inmates have already died from COVID. And, of course, the sanitary, what's the word?
Napkins.
The sanitation inside prisons is non-existent, and they are pits for disease.
Dude, some of the food
and the spread of virus is rampant.
Some of the food stuff, if you hear the food stories, that's like horrifying.
Right.
Like, I've heard some of these prison reports where prisoners, saw back behind the counter of the food where they're getting served, and it says not for human consumption on the bags because it's like meat meant for horses, like it's like ground up leftovers.
Yeah,
it's truly horrific. Someone else was some other previous, a former inmate was telling a story about how the moment he knew it was fucked up was when he was finding bones in his pasta.
Nice.
It's fucking horrifying.
Yeah.
But to go back to the much more uplifting story of fires, fires are again hitting the Brazilian Amazon. Amazon Watch says that most are man-made. Again, you'll recall last year this was actually got a lot of mainstream media coverage for a change. There was just fires raging across the Amazon in Brazil, and these are encouraged by their fascist leader Bolsonaro, both because he's anti-indigenous, he fucking hates indigenous people, and because they just want as much open land for like grazing and things. They don't want forests, which of course the world needs, like humans need, the planet needs, but that's not going to make them as much money currently for like the next 5 years as clearing the forest and jungles and mining and big ag and grazing for their cattle and all those things that they can use it for. But you use it for those things, and guess what? It's all gone in 5 years, and you've cut away all the trees that create oxygen for the planet. I mean, it's so horrifying. I'm having the associate director of Amazon Watch on Redacted VIP this week, so check out that as well.
Well, and the thing that always boggled my mind with regards to clear-cutting rainforest for for the use of cattle grazing and all that shit is that once you use it once, you can't, it's done. Because the thing with rainforests is that the majority of the biodiversity is above ground as opposed to below ground with a lot of forests you see elsewhere. So you can't replant fucking grass seed in the rainforest. It won't fucking work. So you're literally destroying rainforests that have formed over millions, if not billions of years so that your fucking cows can graze for a season. Mm-hmm. And then it's done. Mm-hmm. It's
or ripping it all away for a piece of gold.
Right.
And then it's just done. It's just gone. It's just destroyed. So yeah, that's super fucked up, and the U.S. Had a hand in getting Bolsonaro elected, and of course continues to be. And this is not just Donald Trump. The fucking fake of resistance loves to point to Donald Trump as this, this horror show, which he is on various levels, but all of these people seem to support Bolsonaro. When was the last time Biden spoke out against Bolsonaro, or the Democrats spoke out against Bolsonaro, or the mainstream media spoke out against Bolsonaro? They all just fucking sit there and act like he's fine, but Maduro is the dictator. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Biden just put out an ad that shows it's one of these ads where it's for fucking idiots who see images and think, oh, that good thing or bad thing. It's just for fucking morons. It just shows image of people dealing with coronavirus, image of Black Lives Matter protests, and then on a black screen it says Maduro, Chavez, Castro, Trump. Which
reminds me of those questions you'd get on the ACTs, which of these does not belong?
Right, except they're saying he does belong on that list because they view those three as the most horrifying dictators on the planet, when in fact, those three are not the ones setting fire to the indigenous in Brazil. They're not the ones that say that the female lawmaker should be raped, which is what Bolsonaro said. Bolsonaro's son had a black woman lawmaker basically executed in the street. He was connected in some way to that went down. Bolsonaro's a horrifying figure, and they celebrate him. Duterte, all these. We give fucking aid to 70% of the dictators on this planet, and then we turn around and say, yeah, Maduro's the problem because he cut extreme poverty by 70%.
Well, right, and that's the thing. It's like if you look at what these leaders have done, Chavez and Maduro and Castro, it's like whatever your issue, your personal weird issue with socialism or communism is, put that aside for a moment and just look at what they've done. Literacy rates in Cuba are among the highest in the fucking world. Venezuela, people have access to free food, free housing, free education, free healthcare, even in the midst of economic warfare and a pandemic. Their pandemic rates in Venezuela are grossly are significantly lower than other countries in South America and Latin America.
And despite the fact that they've had trouble they've had to pay 2 or 3 times as much for the drugs and equipment and testing and stuff because of these sanctions on them by the U.S., the economic war done by the U.S. But speaking of what people have gotten, just clear your mind. Don't think about which country this is, and just think of these 2 things: guaranteed employment, if you want it, and guaranteed housing. Imagine those 2 things in this country. No matter who you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what your fucking life, no matter what's gone wrong, guaranteed housing. No matter what's gone wrong, no matter how dumb you are, no matter whether you have 0 arms and no nose, you can fucking have a job if you want one. Those things are both in Cuba. They have both those things: guaranteed employment and guaranteed housing. Now, I'm not saying there's not problems in Cuba. There's problems in every goddamn country, but it's like, to point to those as the ruthless dictators on this planet is just so fucking laughable. And that's Biden. That's a Biden ad. Right. Biden put together that ad. Well,
yeah, so really
not him. He doesn't know where he fucking
really
is.
Really what that ad should say is Biden, Trump. That's really all it should say.
Biden, Trump. Speaking of countries we're sanctioning and going to economic war with, we're kind of adding Mexico to that list. As most of you know, Mexico not long ago elected a at least semi-leftist leader, Lopez Obrador, Andre Manuel Lopez Obrador,
AMLO,
known as AMLO by the people, and some people have some complaints with him. I think any lawmaker you get into office, there's going to be complaints, but this article by the Gray Zone is talking about the fact that AMLO and his government have revealed leaked documents that show a broad opposition bloc, is what they call themselves. So the initials in Spanish are BOA. This BOA group consists of, well, I'll just read the subtitle here. Leaked documents. Mexico's oligarchs and establishment political parties have united in a secret alliance to try to remove left-wing President Lopez Obrador from power with help from the media, Washington, and Wall Street. Leaked documents lay out the devious strategy. So basically, the AMLO government got access to these documents, which is a full-on strategy of how to remove him. And they're saying that they have the lobbyists in Washington, that they have the backing of Wall Street, and that goes with what Trump has already done, which is put some sanctions on Mexico. And what did the Trump administration do that for? Giving water and gasoline to Venezuela. Mexico had the gall, had the fucking, nerve to give water and gasoline to people that need it in Venezuela. What a fucking asshole.
Yeah, I mean, again, it really just speaks to the extreme fear of the fear that the U.S. ruling class has of any any country that provides for its people. And of course, particularly, if not exclusively, really in the global south, because of course there are, countries with socialist leanings in Europe, but, we're not fucking invading Norway or planning to get rid of their government. But this is the disdain for black and brown leaders that have leftist leanings and that are democratically elected in nations that we want to lord over. And this is, of course, the whole perception of our backyard. That Latin America and Central America, South America, that's our backyard as the United States. We own that by proxy.
Is that the Monroe Doctrine? So
right, the Monroe Doctrine.
We own Latin America.
Which is really just like an extension of the manifest destiny that it's our destiny to just lord over this half of the world. And of course, now that extends to Africa and the Middle East as well, of course. But yeah, it just really speaks to this disdain. And again, it's not like AMLO is this fucking, extreme socialist. He's not he's not saying let's get rid of borders and let's all create a Zapatista fucking utopia. It's in the same thing that we saw with Lula in Brazil. It's not like he was some
apparently the oligarchs under Lula did rather well. Lula did some very leftist things, but he also was good for the oligarchs, but apparently he wasn't good enough for the oligarchs.
Right. So it's not like we only go after people like Chavez and people like Castro that are, that self-identify as socialists and communists and really demonize the U.S. empire. AMLO does not demonize the U.S. empire. Fucking Lula doesn't demonize the U.S. empire. It's about the fact, as you noted, that they're just not good enough for U.S. interests in the region. Right.
It's offering to give water and gasoline to Venezuela, offering Ava Morales, refugee status to Mexico when we created a far-right fascist uprising in Bolivia. But
also Brazil.
Also Brazil. And the Gray Zone says about AMLO, since his election, he has implemented a revolutionary vision he calls the Fourth Transformation, vowing to fight poverty, corruption, and drug violence, and has increasingly butted heads with his nation's wealthy elites. So basically, there was a transition period where they were like, let's wait and see whether he actually does things like try and help the poor and stuff. And now the wealthy elites have decided, yeah, he is helping the poor enough that we're pissed off, and so let's find a way to get rid of him. And they've got the backing of Wall Street and Washington. But yeah, I figured it was a matter of time, and I don't know if he's still not using security. When he got elected, initially he said he wasn't going to have security because the people would protect him, and I was like, no, they won't. You need fucking security, okay?
Well, even
the people might want to protect you, but
right. Well, even if the people are on your side, you should still have security because, the U.S. excels both domestically and internationally. I'll say at infiltrating and creating divisions and strife, and ultimately, taking down targets in organizations and in countries that they don't like, whether that be COINTELPRO or fucking the Congo. So yeah, get some fucking security.
We are headed over to patreon.com/commoncensored to give you an extra 10 minutes. So we hope you'll come support the show over there. If you feel like you got even $1 out of today's show, that would be awesome because we have no ads. And by the way, I don't know what happened like a month ago. I get emails every day asking me if they can have advertising on my website or my podcast or whatever, and
because they heard you say you don't do ads.
I don't know what it is, but I of course I never answer any of them, but they're all like, "We'll give you thousands of dollars, just let us do ads." Anyway, so we don't do that. We get all of the funding for this podcast from you. Patreon.com/commoncensored. Also, the live stream is this Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We will be there. It's right after Redacted Tonight airs, but it's on a different YouTube channel. So watch Redacted Tonight at youtube.com/redacted tonight. Then come over at 8:30 to youtube.com/moment of clarity for the live stream. Eleanor will be there as well. And Eleanor's movie is at hardroadofhope.com. My comedy special, LeeCampAmerican.com. And my book is at LeeCampBook.com. Also, you can get all of Eleanor's writing, which you put up an incredible July 4th piece
thank you.
this week. That's at artkillingapathy.com. Thank you guys for joining us. Don't forget, we gave you good news this week. Remember that. We gave you good news.
You heard it here.
You heard
Good
it here
news.
first. Keep fighting.
Act out.